have lived and worked for more than 20 years on the African continent, and I wanted to speak today on issues of peace and conflict, but did also want to begin by noting that these represent only a fraction of the experiences of the region. My experience has reinforced that effective engagement in Africa requires relationships and presence, real investments of time, of listening and building trust, deep-rooted understanding of political and conflict dynamics that impact current events, and these are essential for our effective engagement with the region. Too often we're thinking what we may bring to the continent when we need to recognize Africa as a pillar of global leadership and that partnerships with the region are in Canada's strategic interest. So I wanted to speak to 2 points of strategic value for both Canada and for Africa on peacemaking and on pluralism. And given the gravest protection crisis on the planet is currently happening in Sudan, I will speak to Sudan specifically. Canada has a long-standing tradition and role to play in making peace. We have resources and expertise on mediation inside government and across Canada, and we must use these resources more strategically. We have been an important funder for many peace efforts in the region, but we need to do more. We need to invest in senior and strategic presence and expertise around the peacemaking efforts that we fund in Africa. This requires diplomats to have more capacity and support on mediation as a core diplomatic skill. It requires more senior, dedicated diplomatic resources on mediation. Effectively, for us to advance peace, we too need to be at the table. Sudan offers an important example here. Canada has supported a diverse coalition of civilian leaders dedicated to ending the war in Sudan, known as Tagadom. This innovative and pluralist approach is central for Sudanese-led, civilian-driven efforts to end the war in Sudan and put it on a path toward peace. Canada is similarly supporting important efforts for women's engagement in the ceasefire processes. These efforts should be enhanced with senior, dedicated, full-time diplomatic representation on Sudan to engage in the complexities of this process. The lack of coherence internationally is hampering peace efforts, and we need to learn from this. Sudan deserves our full-time focus. I wish to turn now to the value that pluralism brings to cementing Canada's strategic relationship with Africa. Questions of social cohesion, of what it means to engage in our societies, what belonging means to young people, how we talk across our differences. These are questions that all of our societies are grappling with, here, in Africa, and around the world. Investments in pluralism enable us to span conflict and development contexts and support more peaceful and stable societies. Pluralist approaches offer us innovations and engagement with challenging issues in ways that are forward-looking and deepen our partnerships. Pluralist approaches meet societies where they're at. They are not externally driven or imposed, but enable us to work in deep partnership with African leaders, in government, in civil society, to engage together in developing strategies that make all of our societies more coherent, more connected, and more successful. And we've seen the power and potential of this firsthand in the Global Center for Pluralism's work in the region, in the strengthening of democratic governance systems, increasing women's political participation, engagement of youth and marginalized communities to activate their citizenship, and addressing sources of division and polarization. Inclusive service delivery is but one creative example we've seen where we can find new spaces for dialogue and partnership to engage in a pluralist, belonging-centered approach to engage, for example, marginalized communities on the periphery at risk of radicalization. But to return to Sudan, a pluralist approach will be central to the efforts to find a lasting resolution to the conflict. This year, Canada dedicated $130 million in support of the humanitarian efforts in Sudan. But as important as this is, the humanitarian crisis simply will not end unless there is a civilian-centered solution rooted in Sudan's diversity to end the conflict. As Sudanese youth recently called for at the Tagadom Founding Conference in Addis Ababa in May, which I was privileged to attend, they said to us over and over that we all together need to work to rebuild a Sudan that can hold us all with peace and equality. And for me, that pluralist call to action is one that Canada must heed. I have many other examples that would far exceed the 5 minutes that I've been allocated, and I'm very happy to speak on our work in Ghana, Kenya, South Sudan, and elsewhere, and look forward to the committee's questions.